our elected official and the city council has approved one development that would go past that height limit and go and build up to 23 stories. And another development is being pushed behind that one, which will go up to almost 50 stories.
Almost 50 stories. Oh, please go ahead.
We currently have the smaller development in court right now.
Can you explain who the we are?
My organization,
Yes.
The Movement to Protect the People, and another organization called FLAC, Flower Lovers Against Corruption. We have formed a coalition and we filed the lawsuit. We are pro se litigants in that we are not attorneys, but we are being supported by a group of attorneys and paralegals and researchers, and we have filed a lawsuit against the smaller development because they refuse to do an environmental impact statement that is required by state law. The Department of City Planning, in their discretion, has allowed this development to happen without conducting a proper environmental review.
This is often the case where the Planning Commission attempts to skirt around this. Is this a similar case in terms of the political entity or body that is attempting to avoid the environmental impact study that is required for any new development, as I understand it?
Yes, it is quite common for the city to try to circumvent the environmental review process because that process can cost thousands and thousands of dollars to the developer. And because we know that certain projects are heavily lobbied, and in particular this project, the Department of City Planning, in its discretion, quote unquote, have allowed this development to pass through the ULURP process, the land use review process, without a proper environmental impact. The higher courts do have a very low threshold for conducting environmental impact reviews, so we are confident that our lawsuit will eventually be successful. But in the meantime, every possible shenanigans and arguments are being thrown at us to prevent this lawsuit from moving forward.
Let's pause for a moment. Exactly what are developers fearful of in the environmental impact study? We had a similar situation here in Harlem with the expansion of Columbia University's extension. As a matter of fact, the process was so egregious that it was Columbia University that paid for the environmental review, the environmental impact study, which is loaded with contradiction and fraught with every specter of corruption. Is this a similar situation for you?
Well,
and exactly what are the developers afraid of that will come out of the environmental study? What are they afraid of?
The first thing that they're afraid of is the fact that there will be proof that their development would have negative impact on a very public green space. The Brooklyn Botanic Gardens is a public green space. It was given to us by the state to the city in perpetuity, and it was given directly for the creation of a garden. And the garden experts already stated very clearly that this type of development would destroy their purpose, and that over half of the plant life will be destroyed within 10 years. And so they're really afraid that that kind of information will be solidified within an environmental review process. And then they would have to reduce the level or the height of their development or engage in mitigating scenarios that will help to reduce the negative impacts. And those mitigating scenarios could be very cost effective. I mean, it could be very costly to them. And so they don't want, and they also don't want the people and the public to be aware of exactly how detrimental this development will be.
Mm-hmm.
So for all those reasons, they do not want an environmental impact statement to be conducted.
And given the current focus nationally and internationally on the environment and environmental hazards that are produced in part, this isn't it entirely, by developers, in this case, exterminating green life, which is good for the environment and the oxygen levels and any number of reasons. And one would suppose, because of this devastating impact, and of course your lawsuit is of course primary in this, is that it would have aroused more public opposition locally as well as citywide?
Definitely, this particular development or these particular developments has caused an outcry in the community. I mean, there has been a lot of people who normally sit on the sidelines and kind of think, oh, well, it's okay, we need more affordable housing. Then they're now really coming out and say, okay, this scam is up. You cannot destroy a public green space because you're making the promise that you're going to, quote unquote, provide some affordable housing when we all know that that's a scam. And so that's now the conversation. And people are basically saying enough is enough. You cannot take our green spaces. We don't have a lot of green spaces in the city. And for you to decide to destroy one because you want a couple of extra floors for your development is not making sense. And then the other issue was that we found out during the course of this lawsuit that the proposed 117 residential units that were supposed to be created, affordable units that were created in a miracle deal, that it never existed. The community benefits agreement that our local elected official, Lori Cumbo, who's also the majority leader of the city council, made the claim that she had negotiated this deal, and that's why she was agreeing to the development, when in fact the deal never actually ever happened. Is not a part of the rezoning application. The city has been unable to produce it, and it shows just how corrupt our elected officials are when it comes to approving development that is supposed to provide a service to the community and at the same time do a disservice to a public green space.
Yeah. Now, just to be clear, since that letter was never produced or evidence to the contrary, the city councilwoman Cumbo, is that her name?
Yes.
Who is the majority leader in the New York City Council, is that she lied.
Yes, she just outright lied. Yes, she just stated that she had created the deal and then no deal exists. And she stated this at the public hearings. And so it just shows you how unaccountable our elected officials are to us in being able to make such public statements on the record, sworn testimonies taken, and then when we want to at least see the document, to see if it actually exists, it does not exist. And this is in light of the fact that community benefits are very difficult to enforce anyway, but then to further have one that doesn't even exist is just a slap in the face to the community. And it's a slap in the face to the public. And over 1 million people go to the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens every year, and they will be affected by this so-called miracle deal that never happened.
And what is the position of the Brooklyn Borough President in this matter?
I'm sorry, who?
What is the position or support or lack of support by the Brooklyn Borough President, and that would be Eric Adams? What is his position on this project?
Well, he approved the project with modifications, and so that means is that he did not stop it. He could have, if he had wanted to, he could have stopped the project by just stating no. But the moment that you say no or yes with modifications, the project moves forward. So the community board has said a straight no. If he had said a straight no, it could have ended this process. But we know our elected officials, are beholden to the real estate industry. And
why
so
are they beholden to the real estate industry, which is citywide? Let's explain that to our listeners.
Because it's the money. It's the money. He wants to become mayor. And so he needs money for his run to be mayor. And so he depends upon developers' money for his own personal career. And so he will sell or agree to development so to ensure that he will continue to be supported for his particular goals. And so, yes, he said, with modifications, that just moved forward. The city council said yes, and then Lori Cumbo at the end said yes as well.
Let's just quickly digress here for a moment, because you have generally described the position, attitude, and of many elected officials throughout New York City, because they are looking to receive campaign contributions from the very powerful real estate industry here in New York City, as well as the mayor himself, who was caught in a number of compromising situations with respect to receiving donations, campaign donations. And so that is a problem in the city. And my digression here was for you to very briefly, before we return to the lawsuit, to talk about the rezoning proposal of Mayor de Blasio while we are on this flow of conversation.
De Blasio came in with the fact that he had planned on rezoning 15 unknown communities. And he refused to divulge what those 15 communities were. But as we have seen over the past 5 to 6 years, all of these rezonings are happening in communities of color. One was being slated for my community, Community Board 9 in Brooklyn, because, again, its proximity to the Botanic Gardens and Prospect Park. We were very, very successful in being able to stop a district-wide rezoning from happening, and thus now the private developers have to go it on their own. That gives us a little bit more power. But de Blasio's rezonings have all contributed to the massive amount of displacement and gentrification in communities of color, because it has allowed developers to come in and increase heights to build luxury development. Underneath the MIH program, which is the program that's supposed to create quote-unquote affordable housing, the developers have choices, and they normally pick the high-end choices of affordable housing development.
What does that mean?
Apartments that run. These are apartments that are target people who make between $114,000 to $175,000. And so when you target that particular population, you classify it as targeting an affordable housing population, but you're actually targeting middle class to upper middle class development in a low to moderate income community. With the low moderate income communities, average median income is $40,000 to $50,000, and you're creating apartments that start from 112 to 175,000, you're automatically
excluding
increasing a new population to come in and displace the existing population.
Absolutely.
And so that's what these rezonings are.
In East New
They
York,
are
please go ahead. Sorry.
They are just what we call a bonfire. You know, we have the gentrification and displacement that's done on the lower levels by the small property owners, but then you have the serious bonfire of gentrification and displacement that happens as a result of rezonings. Mm-hmm. Because then they take a large swath of land and just change the physical dynamics and encourage the continuation of development in those communities, because now you have increased the billable space of that land.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk here about the subsidies that these developers receive, which makes their deals indeed extremely lucrative. Not only is it a hazard to the environment, as you just pointed out with the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, but also the devastation and the impact on the taxpayers who are paying for these subsidies.
Well, I just wanted to point out, it's not just the subsidies of the 142 tax subsidies, but it's also the opportunity zones that have now been created through the federal government as a result of our newest president.
Yes.
What happens in this is that opportunity zones are created, and anybody who builds in these opportunities do not have to pay capital gains tax until 2047.
Ooh,
capital gains
ouch.
tax, basically the taxes that a developer pays for their development.
So that payment is deferred. It's deferred.
Right. But it's deferred or it's not paid, because if in 2045 the company no longer exists, well, then what happens with the taxes?
They don't pay anything.
It goes away.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh. So 2047, they don't have to pay any capital gains tax on the properties that they're creating. And so and this is nationwide. This is a nationwide program.
Yes.
And then it was given to the state for the state to determine what parts of the community in the state would have these opportunity zones, and they were targeted only for low to moderate income communities. So right in that area, the area that we are now contesting along the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens now has an opportunity zone as well.
Now we've please.
That then encourages further development along that strip. Even though it has height limits, it now encourages developers to try to break those height limits through a rezoning so that they can then also destroy our garden, and not have to pay any taxes to the federal government until 2047.
For those of you who may have turned in late into our program, this is Behind the News for Liberation and Political Consciousness. I'm your host and producer, Nellie Hester Bailey, and we are broadcasting from GHCR.NYC. You can hear and see this program live on YouTube, and when our engineer comes back, Doug, we'll let you know about that. But we are continuing our conversation with Alicia Boyd, political and housing activist in Brooklyn, and one of the founders of Movement to Protect the People. Now, one of the things that many people do not understand is that the politician, the elected official of a particular district in which the development is slated or being proposed to go up, that politician has the political will, if you will, to object to developers coming in and presenting exclusively their plan instead of what would be beneficial for that particular community. And such a case is East New York with now Assemblyman Charles Barron, who has said publicly on many occasions the median income in his neighborhood is about $28,000 to $30,000. It really is a low-income community. So if developers want to come in, they have to target that population for housing. And he says this, and he says he has accomplished this. So, in fact, this is a model for elected officials to refuse and to negotiate on developments that are beneficial to their income targeted community. Do you agree?
Yes, I went to East New York and I saw the development that Charles Barron has been able to get, the same developers that are in other communities to be able to build 6-story buildings that have true affordable housing for the population, the existing population, or what we would call low to moderate income housing. I saw apartments that were going for $700 for one bedroom. $500 for a studio. And these were nicely done. They did not impose upon the environment, and they were meeting the needs of Charles Barron's constituents. So, yes, he is a model. Unfortunately, he's the only model. That's the unfortunate issue, unfortunately. But then, again, no one is proposing to doing any rezoning in his community because he's not allowing that to happen, him or his wife, Barron, Mrs. Barron. So they...
City Councilwoman Inez Barron.
You're not going to come in here. You're not going to rezone. That's the first thing. And if you are going to develop anything, it's going to be underneath my terms, and they have to be affordable to my community. I don't want to hear about percentage of AMIs. I want to see numbers. I want to see dollars and cents. How much would an apartment cost? And he only agrees to these types of developments. And as a result, he's the only community in New York City that has gained black people in residence.
Yeah, gained black population, a population increase.
Have increased the black population. Every other community of color in New York City has actually a decrease in the amount of people of color in those communities.
So this brings us, and we are going to return to your lawsuit. That is the role of the what some of us describe as the Black Miss Leadership class. These are elected officials who have parlayed their personal riches and political endowments to forego representing the interests of their constituents. For example, here, and we have the elected official, Assemblywoman Inez Dickens, who sent a letter to her constituents in which she postulated the theory that the rent laws, the recently passed, were in fact anti-tenant in that it did not favor black landlords, and therefore it was not good for tenants. For one to postulate this analysis, this conclusion, is stunning in light of the facts of the matter. Harlem is losing population every week. Every week. People are being driven out because of unaffordability. And then, of course, our elected official, State Assemblywoman Dickens, of course, agreed to the sweeping rezoning of 125th Street, which developers have started to develop as of now. And this is completely out of the range of the average Harlem tenant. And I think the median income here in Harlem is less than $35,000 a year. It used to be 32. It may still be that. But anyway, let's return to your lawsuit and we've come full circle here. Let's get back to your lawsuit in terms of the issues that you raised, the objections that you raised in the lawsuit. One was that, as you discussed, there was no public review process that went on, so that was a violation. And what are some of the other points that you raised, and what are the points of relief that you are seeking from the court?
Well, one of the most interesting things that have come out of this lawsuit is the fact that the developer, Cornell Realty Management, LLC, whose application got processed, who showed up in court and showed up at every hearing via their attorney, swearing that they owned the property, swearing that they were the applicant on the application. All the documents have their name on the application. Showed up at the temporary restraining order hearing, declaring that they were working on the site and they did not want a temporary restraining order placed against them because they would lose money from not being able to get financing for their development. Made all of these public statements, on the record. Everything has their name on everything. The moment that they get served with the papers, they no longer own anything, not even the application itself. And what's amazing is that the city is supporting that position. The city, the Department of City Planning and the City Planning Commission are basically stating, oh, that's true, Cornell Realty is not a part of the application. And so what we see is that there's a constant collaboration between our city agencies that have been empowered to protect us, to ensure that environmental consequences are disclosed to us, when in fact all they really are the arm of the real estate industry, really being used for whatever desires real estate entity has for development in our community. And that's what's becoming so clear in this litigation, in this lawsuit, is that our city agencies are not doing what they have been empowered to do, which is to protect the community and to protect our green spaces. They are now being instrumental in allowing developers to sidestep, to avoid the law and to get away with it so that they can make money.
Exactly, because the city agencies work in collaboration, in collusion with the real estate industry here in New York City, which is worldwide, to generate and protect capital. That is the bottom line on all of this.
And that is the truth. I mean, for the city to sit there and say, no, Cornell Realty is not a part of this law, is not a part of this land deal, is not a part of this rezoning, with every legal document, states their name, states it's their application, states their name, states it's their application. You know, for them to now say, oh, no, they're not the applicant of record. You got the wrong person on this lawsuit. This lawsuit needs to be dismissed because Cornell Realty is not, the property owner. Cornell Realty doesn't own the application. It's just ludicrous. And yet that is their argument, and they are moving forward with that argument. And, and let's not get into our judicial system that too often does not ensure that these types of shenanigans are put in check. But we are hopeful that that our judicial system, because people are showing up at these hearings, they are watching this process intensely, that justice will be done in our case.
You know, this is really interesting. Here in New York City, as in many cities that are controlled by Democratic mayors or Congress or elected officials, such as Elijah Cummings in Baltimore, Maryland, which is a disgrace, that these elected officials prove every day, not only locally but statewide, that it is about capital. It is about protecting capitalism, of which they depend on their largesse. And so the point is, what can we do about that? We recognize that as a fact, but what do we do? And one of the things that your group, Movement to Protect the People, has done is to confront this bulwark of capital oligarchs in New York City, to say that we do have a voice. We will exercise that voice and that right, and we will take you to court, because if nothing else, even though there may be a complicit judicial system, the people will see and know the truth, because we have presented that in our case to the court. And that easily can become an educational tool for people, so that they will see what their elected officials are doing, instead of relying on fake news from a compliant media outlet, which does not confront these elected officials, or rarely, if they do at all. Can you sort of comment on that in terms of what it is that people can do? Your lawsuit is an example.
One of the things that we have shown really, really clearly is the power of people showing up. We've had, each time we've had to go into the court, we've been able to pack that courtroom with standing room only. And this has made a difference in this case, because all the eyes are watching this case. The media is there. They're reporting on it. The people are there. They're watching it. And this is so important. People always believe that there's a sense of powerless. No, you're not powerless. It's the way that you use your power. You come together. You show up. You come to these meetings. You come to these hearings. And then you will see whether or not justice is being done. Because they don't want you to see that it's not being done. They want you to hold on to the illusion that our judicial system is a fair system. And so when you go and you see that it's not fair, if that becomes the case, then you now see the truth of that. And there might be a movement to change that. Oh. However, you showing up is so important. So we ask people, show up. We have a major outreach that we try to get people to come out to these hearings, to show up at these hearings. We keep insisting, don't give up on your communities. There are ways in which you can organize, ways in which you can educate. There's ways in which you can empower yourself to protect your community and protect your homes and to protect your families.
Okay, and that is this is a plan of community participation and success, regardless of where you live. Regardless of where you live.
And I just wanted to say, we're going to court tomorrow, for example. If you want to come and support us, that would be great. We're going to the Brooklyn Supreme Court. We're going to be in room 456 at the Brooklyn Supreme Court. That's downtown Brooklyn, 360 Adams Street. And, come and see that justice is done. Come and make sure that it's done. Because That's how we empower ourselves. You got to show up. You got to make sure. So again, that's the Brooklyn Supreme Court, 360 Adams Street in downtown Brooklyn, and room 456. The case is Boyd versus Councilwoman Lori Cumbo.
Okay, and will you come back and talk to us at some later date about the Supreme Court ruling? Okay, that...
Yes, definitely.
Okay, that does it for our interview with Alicia Boyd, one of the founders of Movement to Protect the People in Brooklyn. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with our next guest, Hawa Bah, a mother whose son was murdered before her eyes right here in Harlem. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to GHCR.NYC, broadcasting live right here from the village of Harlem, New York. Our next guest on Behind the News for Liberation and Political Consciousness is Hawa Bah. She is the mother of a young man who was murdered by NYPD right before her eyes. Mrs. Bah, welcome to the program. Mrs. Bah?
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you so much to have me in the program today.
Oh, well, we are very pleased that you are able to join us. Mrs. Bah, let us start with you recounting the story of your son and his fatal encounter with NYPD police officers.
Thank you so much. My name is Hawa Bah. I'm the mother of Mohammed Bah. Some of the people know me, some maybe might not.
Okay.
But my son Mohammed Bah was a Muslim man. He was an honor student, taxi driver, lovely son from his neighbors and from his community and family. Mohammed have never committed a crime in his life. On September 25th, 2012, Mohammed was sick. I can tell from Africa that Mohammed was sick. I flew all the way from Guinea to New York. And I met him really sick. I asked everyone how I can take him to the hospital. Everybody advised me, if he don't smoke, I say no. He don't drink, no. He take the pressure medicine before, no. What happened to him? I say he got beat from unknown people. They beat him at the head. They say, call the ambulance and take him to the hospital. I call an ambulance. I never call police. In sending ambulance people come, the police show up, NYPD show up. I tell them, go away, I don't call you. I call an ambulance. They tell me, oh, ma'am, this is the system here. When you call an ambulance here, who will show up? If you see the person, we'll call the ambulance. They work on Mohammed's door. They knock on the door and he tells them, I don't call you, go away. In few minutes, few of officers show up to his apartment. Later, group of them show up again. I tell them, please, Mohammed didn't do nothing wrong. He just sick. I want to take him to the hospital before his birthday. They claim that Mohammed don't want to open the door. I said, if Mohammed don't want to open the door, let me talk to him. He will open the door. The people who come in, they don't want to talk to me again. They come with shields, hammer, semi-mechanic weapon, jacket of bulletproof. I try to beg them. I beg them. They're all in the building. Come out. I say, please. This young man here, he's good for everyone here. He don't have problem with no one here. But he just take this few days. If you just say he don't want to open the door, let him talk to him. He will open the door. They refuse. They broke Mohammed's door. They shot him 8 times.
They broke the door down to the apartment, you mean?
Yes, they broke his door to the apartment and met him in the own home, shot him 8 times.
How many officers were involved in the shooting? 2 or more?
There was 8 people.
8 police officers? Wait, Mrs. Ba,
NYPD.
all of them shot him? All of them shot him?
3 of them, if 3 of them shot him.
Mm-hmm.
But the entire group, there was 8.
Mm-hmm. I see.
But 3 of them shot him.
Mm-hmm.
They
8
shot
times.
him 8 times.
Mm-hmm.
I feel and say, these people are not helping my son. I was falling. I tried to shoot myself. And I look, I don't see blood. I said, been to those people, they are not helping my son. Few minutes later, one of them come and say, open the door. I said, what is my son? I want to see my son. They say, oh, you can't see it. It's a couple of shoots. I said, shoot my son. He said, no. He just have a little scar. He will be okay. I said, then I want to see him. They said, you got to trust her. We'll take him to the hospital and come back, pick you up. Somebody look at me, one of the lady, and say, Mommy, all this white guy behind your son, they killed him. I say, kill him? Kill him for what reason? Go to the hospital. Finally, the doctor tell me, Mom, sorry for your loss. They shoot your son and kill him. I say, what? He said, yes, sorry for your loss. It took me 6 years. I put these people in deposition and testimony. My attorney asked me who took your life. Edwin Matthew. When you shoot Mohammed and tell the other to shoot him, if Mohammed was shooting anyone, he said no. He said, you said he was stabbing you. If Mohammed was stabbing anyone, he said no. If Mohammed was stabbing you, he said no. It was one where the NYPD test the other one, tells the other one. The knife they're talking about, he's stabbing, they never show as evidence up to today. The city helped them to hide everything.
So the police were trying to say that Muhammad was trying to attack them, and that's why they shot him? Is that what they claimed?
Yes, the first story they claimed that Muhammad was stabbing me, and I call the police. Which Muhammad not even see me. Then after they say, oh, Muhammad was stabbing them. That's the reason they shoot him. Knife never show up to no place, up to now today. And all these officers still working.
All of them have continued their duties as New York City police officers and are getting paid.
All of them are still working and getting paid. Never indict them. Never hold another one accountable. Take me 60 years to put the truth, some of the truth out by the judge and jury. Yet they still working. They still having a good life when me and my family will have a punishment will never be the same.
Did you file Mrs. Baugh, did you file a civil suit against them? A wrongful death suit?
Yes, from the civil suits, I put some of the truth out.
Mm-hmm.
And from the civil suits, all the other place, so the DOJ, to federal, they just tell me, oh, we don't have a sufficient evidence to move forward in the case. I said, you don't have a sufficient evidence to move forward in the case to indict the people. They tell you the only thing they killed my son, you were having knife to stab them. You don't ask them to show up with a knife? Oh, they don't have the knife, they have the picture of the knife. I'm calling everyone today and all the time. The system, they said, it was the system to kill black and brown here. That system got to change. If you call an ambulance here, NYPD show up, they're not coming to help black and brown. They come to kill. Because they never take us like a human being. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about all NYPD. Some of the commanders train thousands of police in getting the way they kill Muhammad. I was happy because I think when they train, they say for training, no other one will not be killed again as Muhammad, but yet, they say, even the train are still killing people. I want today, we should have different number to call for mental health or have depression issue. NYPD should not show up when 911 call. We should not be the first responder for 911 call for mental health or depression issue because when they come, they not come to save. They come to kill. And the system they pronounce to me is the system. That system got to change. Black men should not be fair to live in America. Black and brown should not be fair because they work hard here. They be killing us like a decade. It got to stop. No mom should cry as I cry. No family should cry as I see the family. But I want to make sure Muhammad's death not go in vain. He just won over the hero. Muhammad live, help everyone, and he will die and help the future generation to not live as he lives.
Yes. Now, Mrs. Ba, I understand that one initiative that you have, and you have and supporters, is to get a street named after your son. Now, the murder of your son took place at 124th and Morningside. Is that correct?
Yes, it's 125 Morningside Street.
Okay, and one of the things that you're trying... No, first let's back up a little bit, Mrs. Ba. What happened in your civil suit? Did you win a civil suit?
I win the civil suit, but winning the civil suit, I can move forward with the settlement they do. But that settlement take me 1 year and a half, being rallying in front of the mayor office and calling him to drop the appeal, because when we win that before Mayor de Blasio, lawyer, apologized, he just stood up in front of everybody to the court. He said, I want to make sure the city didn't pay this money.
Oh, so the city...
Seriously?
Yeah, Mrs. Ba, just so that our listeners can follow. So you filed a civil suit, you won the civil suit, and the city, under Mayor de Blasio, is appealing the decision of the lower court. So, and you, as you have just explained, one of the attorneys from the city said that they're going to make sure that you did not receive a penny for any compensation for your son's death. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what he said. That one again take us 1 year and a half before they do the settlement.
Oh, okay. So
it take 1 year and a half. Minor the amount which we win from the judge and jury.
Oh,
Minor that they pay. He makes sure that they take some from the jury vote. That's what they fight for, and we just force them for a year and a half, running in front of the office, calling day by day, sending the letter to tell them they should drop the appeal. But winning. What we're talking about today is not a dollar cent winning. If you win in case, it should be the criminal win.
yes.
So the criminal court neither indict, neither convict, neither take the pension. That's what we call winning. That's something why can help you pay you that.
Right, because money cannot compensate ever for the death of your son. Never. Okay, Mrs. Ba, we're going to have to end it here. What is the next action of yours that's coming up around your son, either the appeal or a rally or the street naming? How can the community become involved in your organizing efforts?
I will let you know I'm organizing now, by now. The NYPD should not be showing up. He should not be the first responder for 911 for mental health. I have that campaign going on soon. I have the street name going on soon. I will let you know. And I want to make sure I open a foundation to do what Mohammed used to do. Mohammed used to go to school, drive his taxi. When he come back, I can see Mohammed, before he opened the cupboard and put some money, he have to have some money and can help the less fortunate people. Mohammed liked to give people food. Mohammed used to help, and I want to do that same foundation for Mohammed here.
Okay.
September 25th, I don't make much, but I cook while I make sure at least I feed like 300 people from my house to the church. Mohammed used to feed people, and I will do that. Mohammed was representing my company here. The time they killed Mohammed, I was helping like 150 less fortunate people. I want to say continue her dream to be true.
Well, Mrs. Baugh, thank you very much. And please be assured that the community does support your efforts. And we will have you back. We will have Mrs. Hawa Baugh back to talk about the latest developments in her case. I believe we have one small interview coming up. And we're going to let our engineer, Doug, request our engineer, Doug Frazier, to get the next person on the line. And we're going to have a very brief discussion on lead in the water of Newark. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to GHCR.NYC. I'm your host and producer, Nellie Hester Bailey, for Behind the News for Liberation and Political Consciousness. Our last guest of today is Lisa Davis. She is a political activist, and she is one of the leading members of the Black is Back Coalition, and also the People's Organization for Progress in Newark, New Jersey. Lisa, welcome to the program.
Welcome, and thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate this.
Well, thank you very much. And I should also add that Lisa is head of the Health Committee for the Black is Back Coalition, which is a national organization. So, Lisa, let's get right into it. Tell us about the lead in the water of Newark and how dangerous this is for public health.
Well, again, I so appreciate you having me on this show and giving me the opportunity to talk about what is going on. And I want to first of all say that we have to understand that there is a strong disinformation campaign that various parties have been engaged in. And I want to say something right off the bat. My critique of what has been going on has nothing at all to do with the community activists, the people who live in Newark, the people who live in New Jersey, who've heard about the issue of lead in their water and who have the right to be upset, who have the right to demand accountability from everybody. But there are separate parties here, and saying that criticizing one does not necessarily mean you're automatically for the other, but I do not put all these parties in the same basket at all. So you have the state, you have what the state should have been doing, you have the city, what the city should have been doing, you have the NRDC, the National Resource Defense Council. It's important to understand who they are, because as we know, we will have these corporatists, these corporate gentrifiers who will disguise themselves in 501c3 clothing. So we need to look at who they are. And then we have the people. And I am on the side of the people and on the side of the truth. And before I get into the specifics of what's currently happening in Newark with lead, I want to just say, I wanted to say that I think people should refer to the issue of lead as lead exposure and not just lead in the water, because the biggest threat has to do with lead exposure and lead dust. And lead exposure would include lead in the water, lead in the paint, lead in the soil, when we use those terms. And that's very important, because the biggest threat from everything I've been reading about is the lead dust. And that's not being talked about enough in this issue. That's focusing only on Newark, in a state that has widespread problems, in a state that has been documented for at least 20 years to have widespread problems with lead exposure. And I just want to just briefly just go into a little bit of the politics a little bit, because it's very important to understand the political situation somewhat. So just briefly,
we don't have, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time. So
okay.
If you could just get to the issue specifically, as we told our listeners, of lead in the water. We know that lead exposure is a national problem, and we certainly do know about Flint, Michigan, and other parts of the state, so that we can establish without any doubt. But let's deal specifically with the lead exposure in the water of Newark, please.
Okay. Well, specifically with that, and the issue again that I have with the problem and with how it's being handled is, first of all, there have been things that have been going out that have said that the mayor of Newark just said that the water was safe, that was put on its website and things of that nature, and they're saying that that's all that he said. But when I was doing research and I actually went to the actual documents of what was said, he said more than that. So that's very important for people to understand that as well. And when I looked at the lawsuit that the NRDC is bringing, because they are the ones who are controlling the narrative, the lawsuit only focuses on the city of Newark. And my position was it should be focusing on the state, because if it focuses on the state, then we can begin to look at the regulations that were going on. We can begin to look at the state and what's been going on across the state. But it is only focusing on the city of Newark.
Well, maybe it's the only focus on Newark is because the mayor of Newark is black, and there is a majority black population in Newark, and perhaps the reasons are political more so than anything else. One might conclude that.
Well, exactly. And when I look at who sits on the board of trustees of the NRDC, and this is critical, the people who sit on the board of trustees of the NRDC are these billionaires such as Tishman Construction, Lawrence Rockefeller, the president of Disney, and several others. Now, where this is very important is that Tishman Construction is in partnership with this RBGH group in Newark, who's in phase 1 of developing what they are calling the SOMA Master Plan. The SOMA Master Plan is a plan to develop at least 15 million square feet of downtown Newark. And
wow.
SOMA stands for South
How many
Market
feet
Street.
again?
Yes.
What was that again?
15 million square feet of downtown Newark.
That sounds like the whole thing. As our engineer Doug Frazier is saying, Doug put up his hands and says, that's the whole thing. Go ahead, Lisa.
Exactly. And that was something that was started in 2013. So I think it's important for people to at least get that. We have to understand who the NRDC is, and we cannot allow people to exploit our pain for their own profit. Mm-hmm. Now, the NRDC has also been calling themselves the people who have helped in Flint, Michigan, and I've begun to do some research in Flint, Michigan to try to understand what's going on with that, because I hear that the situation is not resolved at all. But I read something very recently about what was going on in Flint, and they mentioned that the contractor that they had to lay down these pipelines and to oversee it, that they stopped the contract. They did not renew it, and they said the contractor kept asking for more money. And then I see the contractor is AECOM, AECOM. And I'm like, AECOM? Tishman Construction sold their company to AECOM, yes. And AECOM Tishman is a subsidiary company. And Dan Tishman has sat on the board of AECOM. And yet, he's on the board of the NRDC.
Now let's get back to Newark in terms of what is happening there. When was the alarm first? When did it first come up about the lead in the water, the drinking water, which is what most people are concerned with? Because here in New York, I mean, we just learned that there's lead in the water here. So really, it is a national problem from these corrosive elements near our water table that these oligarchs, these corporate oligarchs, have buried their contamination trash underneath the earth, in many cases close to our water supply, or even dumping their waste into rivers and streams and lakes without any regard whatsoever to the safety of the drinking water of people within that township or municipality.
Exactly. Well, the first time that Newark is reported to have shown elevated levels of lead in its water is 2017. And the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection has stated that from 1993 to 2015, Newark wasn't showing elevated levels of lead. I don't necessarily trust those reports. I think it had to do with the way the water was being tested. But in 2017 was the first time that Newark showed elevated levels of lead in the water.
Was there an alarm sent out to the public? Was that alarming? Did the media sit on it, or people didn't pay attention to it? You said this was in 2015? 2015?
In 2017.
2017?
2017 was the first time.
So what did the media do with this explosive information, or the elected officials?
Well, I do know that that there was a notice that had gone out. I'm not sure if it went out to everybody, but I did see a notice on the website stating that Newark has been found to have elevated levels of lead in the water. They were saying they were going to be doing more testing. They recommended that people continue to run the water, to let the water run out. And I do know that there was an issue of doing more testing that they were working on, and to find out exactly what the problem was and what was going on with the problem.
What do you mean by the suggestion to households to let the water run out? It's sort of the thing about you turn on the water if you're going to drink tap water, and you let it run for a minute or so, and then you get the water to drink or to cook with.
It's supposed to flush the lead out. It's supposed to do that when you do that. One way of doing it. I know that when they used to test before for lead in general, they said a lot of cities and stuff would flush the water out, and that way it wouldn't show up as having lead. And the EPA demanded in 2016 that they stop doing that. But I have read in several other cases as well that if you run the water, that it helps to flush the lead that's out that has been in the pipes, because the water has been sitting in the pipes.
Mm-hmm. Now, Lisa, what is the solution to this lead exposure in water? Isn't it due to the fact that these pipes that are very old, that were been with us for a century or more, are corrosive and are causing this problem? And in fact, we need as part of our infrastructure rebuilding is to install or put in new piping, particularly in the antiquated municipalities that has this problem of corrosive pipes that's producing this lead.
I do know that that is something that Newark is currently doing. They are removing everybody who's had lead pipes, all the buildings that have lead pipes in them, they are removing the lead pipes free of charge. Your homeowners won't have to pay anything, although federal regulations does not require the city to pay for these pipes, but Newark is doing it. But I don't think anybody should have to pay to have these lead pipes replaced. And what you said is absolutely true. We have an aging infrastructure, and especially in the Northeast, which has some of the oldest housing stock. I was reading that New Jersey has pipes that have been in the ground since the Civil War. And that there is a massive issue, and I was reading a little bit more about New Jersey, but a massive infrastructure issue with water, where the pipes are leaking, things are pipes are corroding, they're leaking, they really need to be replaced. And that's just another reason that I find it extremely problematic that all the focus has been just on Newark, while in the meantime, these other issues that you are raising are being obfuscated, and especially in New Jersey. New Jersey had a fund for lead where $50 to $100 million has been reappropriated to other things. I have no idea where, but none of that's being talked about.
What has been the role of the EPA with respect to the lead exposure in Newark's water?
Well, the EPA...
The EPA means the Environmental Protection Agency, which is a federal agency, which did so poorly in Flint. But go ahead. What has been its role in Newark?
I just have to say that the EPA in general has a horrible history of doing anything about these kinds of contaminants and environmental racism that the African community has been exposed to. They have been, as of 2015, the last report that I was reading, although they had many complaints, they rejected at least 162 complaints since its inception of the Civil Rights Commission of the EPA. They rejected about 162 complaints without investigation. They dismissed 52 upon investigation. As of 2015, they hadn't done anything in terms of the complaints that were brought against them. So they might be... they might be acting a little more strongly now because I know that there's been a lot of focus on what they have been doing or have not been doing. I do know that in Flint, there has been a class action lawsuit brought against them, and the Inspector General for the Department of Environmental Protection, the EPA basically said they are supposedly an independent group that did an audit, but they found that the EPA was negligent in enforcing guidelines and regulations, and they felt that they were very negligent in doing that, which also leads to part of the problem in terms of what has been happening. The regulations they need to be looked at. We need to understand what these regulations are. Like, I'm reading things such as, if you are a public facility, a public water facility, comes under more strict regulations than a private water facility. And when I hear that stuff, it just makes my mouth drop, because I say to myself, how can that be? But this is where I feel that the level of activism really needs to be led toward and geared toward. We need to really understand these regulations and enforcement and hold everyone accountable when it's not being done.
Unfortunately, our time is up, and many thanks to Lisa Davis, who is with the Black is Back Coalition. She's head of its Health Committee. And that does it for Behind the News for Liberation and Political Consciousness, right here on GHCR.NYC. Podcasting from the village of Harlem. Thank you so much for joining us. And our lead-in music has been from Miles Davis. Many thanks to our engineer, Doug Frazier. And we will be back here next Sunday. Thank you for tuning in.